Now that we have things working with Vite, it's going to be really easy to be able to drop in some JavaScript with our Elm app. The first thing I want to cover is how do we send initial data into our program in the event that there's some environment variable or some information that we want Elm to have access to right when it starts up, so that when the init function runs, we're all set. This is going to cover the answer to that question, which is flags. So let's take a look at the app that we had. I cleaned up a bit of the stuff from the previous video, so we don't have those old subscriptions or dice roll stuff anymore. And a long time ago, I added in this flags variable, and I said you can ignore it, but we're going to come back to it later. Now is then. Now is the later I was talking about. So rather than using an empty tuple, I'm going to make my own. I'm going to make my own flags type alias. And so in an Elm program, flags are what we tell Elm will be the initial data that it will always receive when the app starts up. So I'm gonna leave this like this for now, and let's kind of get to the part where we know what we want to add here. So I'm just gonna rename that. Everything still works the same. Let me make myself a little bit smaller here. Let's go back to the situation where we were using browser.events to keep track of like the window size. Browser.events. So what we had set up was browser.events.onResize was a subscription we could listen to, so that anytime the user changed the size of the window, we would get that width, we'd get that height, and everything would be okay. So this is going to be resized window. And I'm going to get rid of this click to start. We're not going to use this anymore. What resized window will do is it'll have access to the width and the height. So this will work fine. But we want to store that size over here, maybe in a window property that has, you know, an int and an int tuple here. And this would be like the dimensions for our window. Maybe we want to use a record here for clarity. So width would be the first integer, and height will be the second integer. The issue is when we start our app up, we don't know what the width and the height is. And in order to find out, we'd have to run some type of command, or we'd have to have that information passed in as flags. And the commands fire after init runs. So our only choice here, if we really want to have a width and a height, is to ask JavaScript to provide that when our app starts up, so we don't have to do any weird side effects or wait for that information to be available. Otherwise, we'd have to have a conditional situation where in the beginning we don't know what the window size is. Let me say, let's just do a debug.toString for the window here. So in the beginning, our app doesn't know what the window size is, and we have to wait until the user resizes it. So model, we're going to change the window so that the width equals the width that came in from our message over here, and then the height equals the height that came in from our message. Just for clarity, I'm going to rename these variables so that you know that width is the key, is the field in our record, and W is the value that's getting passed in here. So this is different than this. I just don't want to have two things that look the same, because otherwise it might be confusing which one I'm talking about. Resized window, width, height. Oh, and that's right, because we're using a maybe, we want to wrap that in just. So notice how the app behaves now. In the beginning, I don't know my window dimensions, and then when I resize, I figure it out. So this isn't ideal. Ideally, we would always know the window dimensions, and that's what I'm going to use flags for. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say that when our app starts up, we're always going to have access to window width, and window height. Somehow I typed it over there too. Window width and window height. And what that means is I don't have to say I will maybe have that information. What I can do is I can always get it from those flags that are passed into my program. So we're going to say the width equals flags.window width, and the height, if I can type it, flags.window height, if I can type it. So if I save this, we're going to get an error here because I still have this lingering just. If we save this, my app is blank. And why is my app blank? That is because I promised Elm that it would get access to an object with a window width field when it didn't. So if we look over here, we never actually passed that information in. So it's really important if you're using flags that you make sure that you always are providing this information. Otherwise, you're going to have some issues. So let's use those flags now and pass in that window width property. I'm going to use parse int. I think sometimes window.inner width can return a number that has decimals in it. So I just want to make sure that I am always providing an integer value, because that's what Elm's going to expect. So when I save this, what you'll see is right at the beginning, my app is initialized, and I have the height and the width that was passed into me from JavaScript. I didn't need to resize my window. Notice that there's no resize events yet. And then after I resize, you'll see that that width is changing, and we're getting events here for each one of those changes. So every single time I get an event, you're going to see that number of the debugger goes up. And that's me resizing the window and then calling all those events on animation frame. And Elm takes care of that for us. So this is the high level idea of flags. But if you make a typo, your app's going to go blank, and you don't want this to happen in practice. So what I showed you here with main.elm, it's actually, I don't really close to the right. I don't tend to use flags like this. What I like to do is I like to use a JSON decoder for my real apps, because I never want to get in the situation where an untrusted value coming from the outside, coming from JavaScript, makes my page blank. So what I recommend in practice is if you check out the json.decode module, we can use elm install to install that, elm/json. And this video is not going to go too much in depth about how to write these decoders, but I just want to show you the technique for this example, which is making a decoder for these flags. So rather than saying that the flags are going to come in already parsed for you and already handled, what I recommend is saying that you're just going to get raw JSON from JavaScript, and then over here, your app won't be able to crash. Any JSON value that comes in from JavaScript is going to work, and it's going to be up to you to make a decoder that works. So if you use json.decode value and you have a flags decoder, you can pass in that raw JSON, and if everything works out okay, you're going to get your flags as you expect. But if there's any errors, you can handle those. And so in a real production app, let's just set it to 0 for now. In a real production app, maybe this is a big deal and we want to stop the program or let the user know. But you might just want to log something to your logging service saying hey, with this deploy, something went wrong. So it's up to you how you want to handle this. For the sake of this tutorial, I'm just going to hard code these to 0 when this happens. But the high level idea is that you let Elm know with a JSON decoder how you're going to turn that raw JSON into flags. And that way it can conditionally succeed or fail, and you're going to have some fallback that's going to be more resilient. So because this is an object with 2 fields, I'm going to use map2. Again, I'd love to cover these JSON decoders in a future video, but it's not going to be in this intro course, unfortunately. So all we're going to do is just kind of write a basic decoder that's going to look for a window width and window height field. It's going to expect integers here. And what that means is if everything works okay, if the decoder succeeds and it is able to find these 2 fields, it'll be fine. But if it doesn't, we're going to have some fallback here that's going to make it so our app doesn't crash, doesn't go blank. So that's just one thing to be aware of with flags. I always use JSON decode values for actual applications. But if you're just getting started and you just want to tinker around, it's totally okay to just use type alias flags and just use flags directly here. Something to keep in mind. Cool. So that is how flags work. I covered that edge case with typos. You never really want a blank app in practice, so use JSON decoders for that. And then in the next video, we're going to cover how we can use ports to do things not just on init, but be able to send messages out from Elm and have Elm get messages from JavaScript. So that's going to be exciting. It's going to involve some local storage stuff. So I'll see you there.